Avatar is a weird franchise, as it now feels right to call it after finally reaching 3 entries, having carved out a unique corner of the industry that survives on the basis that other blockbuster movies aren't willing to dump obscene budgets on trying to recreate very little more than spectacle of such unrivaled CGI-conceived enormity you just have to witness it at the cinema, preferably in 3D, in order to best assure your senses are so overwhelmed you don't notice how forgettable everything else is. Though Avatar's box office success gets all the more praise due to it being an original IP rather than another entry in an already huge brand, narratively, Avatar is no more original than Titanic being based on a famous historical event. And even more so than Titanic, it comes across as having been meticulously engineered to maximise mass appeal. What combination of familiar ideas, amplified by cutting-edge CGI, would most effectively bring global audiences to the cinema? That's what it seems James Cameron asked himself, and, with Avatar, answered better than anyone has done before or since. Avatar's supposed originality itself isn't the impressive part of its success. It's how accurately Cameron managed to select his combination of ideas, and that, from 20 years of making crowd-pleasing action movies, he had earned the industry trust to gather a budget to realise something on the necessary scale without it having to be an adaptation of an already famous brand. It's an achievement that rests not just on Avatar, but on everything in his career leading up to it, especially Titanic, and especially his previous contributions to CGI that helped pave the way for the motion capture that made Avatar possible. Titanic's record-breaking success in 1997 gave Cameron the freedom to spend over a decade developing Avatar, building anticipation to the point where a new movie from the director of the highest-grossing movie ever was automatically an event, breaking new ground with motion-captured characters in a fully CGI world, and in 3D, don't forget, only further ensured Avatar's box office dominance in 2009. In real life, I've never heard anyone talk about the Avatar movies any deeper than mentioning they saw a new one is coming out soon, or that they just saw the new one that came out and it was, indeed, another Avatar movie. Online, however, it is most commonly repeated how derivative Avatar's story is, drawing comparisons to Dances with Wolves and Pocahontas, among others, and that this is the reason nobody talks about it in real life. Its story is indeed so derivative as to be forgettable when left on its own, and the original was left on its own for 13 years before getting a sequel, but the familiarity also worked in its favour in the short term to give the spectacle as much room as possible to do the heavy lifting.
Telling a story that was simple in an archetypal manner that located them comfortably so they could have an emotional reaction.
At the cost of more unique storytelling and iconography, the deliberately derivative simplicity of Avatar became the ultimate theme park ride, superficially thrilling and non-divisive, but you'd struggle to find someone who considers it their favourite piece of media.
Sequel. Kaboom!
Avatar: The Way of Water, which is an awkward and generically unmemorable title the film barely earns because what The Way of Water entails is barely solidified beyond just existing in water, spends the opening scenes of its 3-hour runtime re-establishing the Pandoran jungle from the original film and catching us up on Jake Sully's new place there in case we forgot, which the majority of viewers definitely will have done if for no other reason than the gap between this sequel and the original being longer than the gap between the original and Titanic, a long enough gap of cultural inactivity that Way of Water feels like a kind of premature legacy sequel. It was expected, given the 13-year gap, that the sequel would benefit from another leap in CGI technology, not necessarily breaking new ground as much as the original, but definitely proving itself the pinnacle of CGI by making most other contemporary blockbusters look bad. And since 3D is yet to have taken off on any scale Cameron hopes it will, it still had that going for it as well. Improvements can be seen most noticeably with how water and lighting interacts with the Na'vi's newly detailed skin textures. But even if 13 years worth of improvements didn't come across as having been made, the film would have still benefited from the same hype the original did, which is that James Cameron has spent a decade on his next film, so he must be cooking up something insane, and it will be an event because he and everyone else keeps saying so. We learn that Jake Sully and Neytiri have been leading their clan and raising a family that includes their biological children, Loak, the older one, and the younger one, the mysteriously conceived daughter of Sigourney Weaver after she died and got uploaded into AWA, and Spider, the human son left behind by Quaritch after he died.
You do not deserve to live.
No, think about it, right?
Kiri is distractingly performed by the 70-year-old voice of Sigourney Weaver, and Spider is the most narratively shoehorned and poorly performed character of the sequels. Unavoidably, always compared to the Na'vi twice his height, he's running around with too often cringy results. I suspect he exists largely as an extension of the film's role as a tech demo, showing off how convincingly they can display interactions between a real actor and fully CGI blue aliens, even though such interactions are when the CGI is at its least convincing.
Tinitiri, he would always be alien. One of them.
The setup and other parts of the film are exposited with help from the return of voiceover, but unlike the first film sourcing that voiceover from vlogs Jake was making about his mission, he's either talking directly to the audience or to someone or into something the franchise is yet to establish, making it even harder to justify narrating things happening visually just in case any viewers would be left behind, and contradicting the immersion those visuals exist to create. A character literally telling you what's happening in the plot and on screen as you're watching it, not even particularly to save runtime, is a surefire way of reminding the audience they're watching a movie, perhaps even more than the uncomfortable 3D glasses they may be wearing.
This is our re-entry into the world 13 years later. There's a number of new characters to introduce, and that really is the gateway to everything else. And I'm just curious, how difficult or perhaps easy was it to crack Act
It was
One?
the hardest fucking thing I've ever done. I don't know about you guys. But we had too many ideas to service and too much backstory, so there was the problem of recapitulating movie one. For an audience we knew was going to be years apart from having seen it. There was the problem of then somehow addressing the 15 years in between movie one and where the new movie starts, because we wanted to tell this story of teenage kids, so we knew there was a 14-15 year jump. And then there was a problem of kickstarting the story to get the Sullys out of the jungle and to the reef, because we knew that was the goal. So the goal was to be at the reef by the end of Act One. And it's like, man, talk about 10 pounds of shit in a 3-pound bag. So, but one of the problems is there was a major thing that happens to the character of Spider, and I don't want to say what it is. But the breakthrough came when we pulled that raw and bleeding out of Act 1 of movie 2 and dropped it into Act 1 of movie 3 and just made it its own thing. And then all of a sudden it got quite clear what to do. Opening montage. Jake tells you everything you need to do, that you need to know. 4.5 minutes. Boom. Humans come back. 2 minutes. Wanton destruction. And then you're at minute 6 and the story starts. So, but it certainly wasn't clear to us. We were kind of having too much fun.
A new star in the night. It could only mean one thing.
Colonel, you hear me? Colonel?
Quaritch wakes up in his new avatar body and starts fighting the avatars around him, his brain cloned before this whole cloning situation was explained to him, so that his clone, created in the event of a death he didn't expect to happen at the hands of someone he didn't know would cause it, has to watch a vlog of his old human self explaining it to him and therefore to us, and giving the new blue alien Quaritch his new antagonistic mission of avenging his own death and bringing Jake Sully to justice for betraying humanity, a reintroduction of an already cartoonish character that is so clumsy it's just amusing, as plausible as the cloning of one of the RDA's military leaders may be.
Why so blue?
Quaritch and his reanimated squad re-enter the jungle of the original movie, exploring the site of its final battle and finding the remains of Quaritch's human body. Then they conveniently stumble upon and capture all but the eldest son of the Sully children.
You're his, aren't you?
Quaritch recognizes Spider as his son, and Spider finds out Jake and Neytiri killed Quaritch, which is meant to help justify his fence-sitting and aiding of Quaritch for the remainder of the film, including saving his life at the end, showing that although he prefers Na'vi life, he does still feel stuck between that and his human identity Neytiri is blatantly, racistly resentful of. It might be well within James Cameron's capacity for some visual storytelling like this, but the story itself is so simple and hand-holdy and stilted in how it's told over multiple hours that nothing much feels like it's explored in much poignant depth, and Quaritch gaining some much-needed multi-dimensionality through his dismissal of his human failure and his unconvincing compassion for Spider still falls short at making him a compelling boogeyman parallel to Jake Sully. He is more interesting than the one-dimensional Marine he was in the original film, but as far as Way of Water is concerned, I still don't consider him a good character, although he does probably make for the most entertaining personality. Back exploring Pandora in their hunt for Jake Sully, with Spider becoming a sort of Na'vi tour guide for the squad, they eventually decide to tag along with a whaling vessel in the hopes that provoking the Water Clan will lead him to Jake, that Jake will reveal himself in another resistance movement, or that he'll happen to stumble upon all of Jake's kids to take them hostage again. Don't worry about guessing which one, it turns out to be all three, and when it really matters, Spider does finally realise that Quaritch isn't somebody he should be helping find and kill his family. Maybe when the RDA was torturing him, they gave him brain damage.
The leader must die.
Jake hands over leadership of the clan, effectively staging his own death, before fleeing across the ocean with his family, as if that would actually make his and Neytiri's people safe from Quaritch's mission to capture him, or humans intent on colonizing Pandora regardless of any Jake Sully existing, especially when we later see Quaritch attacking entirely unrelated clans while searching for him in case they're providing Jake shelter or know where he is, endangering the Water Clan he seeks refuge with, on top of leaving his old clan behind to fend for themselves.
I see now. I can't save my family by running.
If anything, the development feels closer to an excuse to relocate the story to a new setting Cameron wants to explore, and we all know how much Cameron loves water, so that was the inevitable choice for the new biome. Besides occasionally cutting back to Quaritch and Spider, the second act is made up of Jake's family settling into this new community, repeating the fish out of water arc, but much more literally than Jake suffered in the first movie, and revolving more around Jake's kids than Jake himself, or Neytiri for that matter, who gets largely sidelined in the film's biggest blunder to its best performed and most compelling Na'vi character. The escapism of the previous film's jungle really had nothing on this sunny, tropical environment, seeing the characters swim and bond with sea creatures no more or less inventive than the recognisable jungle creatures we've already seen. Whilst undoubtedly visually expensive, unlike the first film summarising a lot of this world building in montages, it provides little enough narrative momentum in Way of Water that it quickly grows repetitive and self-indulgent, but simultaneously fails to elevate the world building above being aesthetically pleasing props for the audience to gawk at. It's not completely without narrative substance, because Cameron doesn't write meaningless drivel, but it does really take its time through Cameron wearing his love of the ocean on his damp sleeves to get to the cookie-cutter substance this franchise's pursuit of mainstream palatability is limited to, unwilling to follow through with its ideas in ways that could introduce the nuance needed to properly challenge viewers. The main plotlines include the more annoying of Jake's sons bonding with an outcast whale, and the Sigourney Weaver-voiced daughter having some spiritually induced seizure when connecting to Awa. The latter is set up for her having magic Awa-related powers that save the characters when needed when Awa doesn't want to intervene for some reason, and the former is how this sequel explores Avatar's environmental themes and reaches the climax. The Sky People aren't just targeting Jake or hunting whales to get to him as much as he may believe. They are harvesting this film's replacement resource for unobtainium, a brain fluid that supposedly halts human aging. Something so game-changing you'd think the combined forces of every country on Earth would have already committed to taking over Pandora together, or killing each other to get there first. But fine, they just discovered this brain fluid, and the main whaling guy, who as it turns out in the sequel Fire and Ash doesn't die after this happens to him, is one of the earliest arrivals of what would only make sense to turn into a gold rush. However, even though the whales have been inefficiently killed at sea for a little while, rather than rounded up and bred like cows like would actually make sense for humans to inflict on them, neither the intelligent and wise Society of Whales nor the water clans they are closely allied with have resisted on a large scale because of the strict pacifism at the centre of the whale's culture, even exiling the whale one of Jake's sons has befriended for fighting back after his family was killed.
We knew about this hunting of our two Kun people, but it was over the horizon, far away. Now, it is here!
Only when the aftermath of the whaling visibly arrives in the water clan's territory, specifically the killing of the clan matriarch's whale companion, do they finally look past the blind pacifism of their wise whale friends and fight back alongside Jake.
Kids are under attack. They're defending a Tulkun. It's your kids too. The demon ship. Yes.
A shift of brief on-screen consequence as they disappear from the conflict once the climax narrows entirely to rescuing the Sully family from Quaritch after the eldest son, whose defining trait was to keep his younger brother out of trouble, dies. Neytiri's grief-fueled rampage over this character we barely knew is one of the standout sequences featuring the best-looking action of the whole franchise, finally conveying how terrifying a Na'vi would realistically be to go up against as a human soldier without access to something like the mech suit Quaritch died in during the original film. As a whole, the climax throws together the usual Cameron spectacle, with some of the CGI involved in the boat action looking a bit wonky. But the real highlight is this dark, Eclipse-staged rescue aboard the sinking ship, especially the cross-cutting between Jake with his remaining son and Neytiri with her daughters, narrowly escaping drowning. This is easily the film's most emotionally resonant moment, the family surviving the ordeal together, all the more powerful following the loss of the eldest son. But it would have hit even harder if the characters had received a 3-hour runtime's worth of development and been more likeable to begin with.
My Jake! Dad!
Mom!
The whole film's build-up doesn't earn the weight this climax is reaching for, gesturing at tensions between warrior and father, warfare and family, and heroism and survival, but falling short at matching the intimate and bittersweet emotional payoff of the ending.
Yeah, check that out, see?
An arc that is certainly undercut by the story's reliance on repeating the capture and rescue cycle multiple times to force him into a confrontation with Quaritch.
I'm coming for you. When I do, I'll kill your whole family. Let's get it done.
The very final moments of the ending so closely mimicking the original, as though this were the fan service ending to a legacy sequel, doesn't help the film counter the common criticism that the whole thing is a rehash of the first, a criticism only really true from a broad view of the plot beats. Jake enters a new culture, learns its customs, humans exploit the natural resources important to the Na'vi living there, there's a conflict over those resources culminating in a duel with Quaritch, Awa intervenes to save the protagonists, and we end at a sacred location where Jake officially embraces this new way of life, the way of water if you will. The similarity is undeniable, but the family themes and parallels with Quaritch becoming a Na'vi as well give Way of Water a leg up on the generic going native blockbuster structure of the original. It's not as tight as the original, executing its core dramatic beats with less precision, but I do think it provides a more narratively and tonally unique experience. The harder to solve issue is that Way of Water struggles to obscure those repeated beats with stronger writing, clearer stakes, or more compelling character work, ultimately feeling like a visually stunning biome change that acts as a fresh coat of paint featuring a bridge of half-developed characters. The biggest problem with watching Way of Water may not even be within Way of Water itself, but in how it functions as a predecessor to the third movie, Fire and Ash, in hindsight of that coming out at the end of 2025, and kind of screwing both of these Avatar sequels over in regards to properly moving this franchise forward in the way it needed.
The fact that you've been able to get this many out of your imagination, give me something about the fourth and the fifth, give me some direction that we're going.
You know, we think of the performance capture space as a kind of an infinite space where we can do anything we want. And I've got an imagination big enough to imagine 100 Avatar movies. So